So as we go through book three, I'm going to be talking to you about the literary elements. So we talked a lot about application in the last book, or part one and part two, kind of more of the significance of some of the ideas. And now we're going to look at literary elements, and it's all in preparation for you. You'll be writing a short assignment or a short essay on some of the symbols of baptism, fire, the river, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and walk through it together, looking for those. So he goes back to his house. He finds that his marriage is obviously nothing what he thought it was. His wife had called the alarm, and she had packed everything. She's leaving. He tries to run past her, but her body is stiff. Her face has powder on it. Her mouth is gone without lipstick. Mildred, you didn't put in the alarm. She shoved the valise, and the waiting beetle climbed in and sat mumbling, poor family, poor family. Oh, everything gone, everything gone, everything, everything. What is it that she clearly values? It's her stuff, her television existence, her television life, the friends and the family that she has there, much more significantly than her own husband. And so obviously we notice that for all intents and purposes, his marriage is gone and destroyed, which he makes reference to in the following quote. So Beatty says to him, he says, "This is happening to me? How could this happen to me?" "What a dreadful surprise," said Beatty, "for everyone nowadays knows, absolutely is certain, that nothing will ever happen to me. Others die, but I go on. There are no consequences, no responsibilities, except there are. No matter how much you delude yourself, there are. But let's not talk about them. By the time the consequences catch up with you, it's too late, isn't it?" So just the way that he forms dialogue and conversation here with overstatement and kind of irony and satire. Satire is a tone that's used to point out kind of the obvious and in sort of a derogatory manner. And he's pointing out the obvious of Montag's naivety, that you think nothing bad is going to happen to you. Did you really buy that illusion? Come on, I thought you were enlightened. But you failed to recognize that you are just as vulnerable as every single other person who has deluded themselves. So you are a product of your own delusion. So again, it's his tone that helps the reader to understand that this is a significant comment, and it's a shaming comment, not only for the character, but for the reader. He continues, and he's basically kind of flicking his igniter on and off, making some small talk. And he says, "What is it about fire that's so lovely? No matter what age we are, what draws us to it?" And he blows out the flame and he lights it again. "It's perpetual motion, the thing man wanted to invent but never did. It's almost perpetual motion. If you let it go on, it would burn our lifetimes out. What is fire? It's a mystery. Scientists give us gobbledygook about fiction and molecules, but they don't really know. Its real beauty is that it destroys responsibility and consequences. A problem gets too burdensome? Into the furnace with it. Now, Montag, you're a burden, and fire will lift you off of my shoulders. Clean, quick, sure. Nothing to rot later. Antibiotic, aesthetic, and practical." Fire here is treated as a symbol for something else. It changes its symbolic meaning depending on the period of time. So obviously, when this was written in 1952, in the Cold War era, you see that Stalin's regime and the different communist countries were literally using fire. They were using gas chambers. They were using concentration camps, whatever it took to just remove people. You are a burden to me. You're a problem to me. I'll get rid of you. I'll burn your books. I'll burn your existence. I will make it as if you had never even been born. So that was kind of the literal threat that fire represented at the time, that governments had that opportunity, and the means to do something like that. Whereas in our context, obviously, while our government probably could have the ability to make somebody disappear, they don't typically use it. And so what is fire today? What are those things that we have access to that just poof, make somebody go away entirely? Or what do we use to make a problem go away? We blame. We frame other people. You, I mean, on a silly way, but like unfriend, like this relationship, like we were never friends. We don't have to deal with the consequences. I never have to see you or talk to you again. I've been told multiple times, well, by the same person, like one of my longest standing friends who had been going through rough patches, that I'm cutting you out of my life. And that was it. She came back and then did it again. And she came back again. However, we feel that we have the right to just completely disengage with people as if they didn't even exist. And we don't have to deal with the human catastrophe that is a broken relationship. So it's antibiotic, it's aesthetic, it's practical. And isn't that again what divorce is? We don't look at the consequences, we just do away with it, sign the paper, and move on. But that is not the reality. So he continues on, Mildred, and he's like, he can't get past the fact that his wife just gone over him. And then he snaps and he decides, he lets the flame just kind of leap out and lap at the books. He steps into the bedroom and he fires the twin beds. He burns the bedroom walls and the cosmetics chest and the tables in the dining room and everything that showed, and I think this is significant, that he had lived there in this empty house with a strange woman who would forget him tomorrow, who had gone and quite forgotten him already, listening to her seashell radio pour in on her, and pour in on her and in on her as she rode across town, alone. Again, a comment on the loneliness. But again, with in the 1950s, relationships were so fluid simply because there wasn't like security or sureness because of some of the historical events going on, and you didn't know, there was sort of the secret police system going on, so you didn't know if your wife or your husband would turn on you, and that was common. And they were children turning on parents. I mean, we read a little bit of that or talked about that a little bit last year. So when we were reading 1980, or was it Brave New World? Brave New World and Animal Farm. So just kind of keep those things in mind, that this is a reference to what was going on historically speaking. Okay, now we're going to look at, I highlighted in green all of the irony, symbolism, metaphor, simile, and personification. Now, I did not do every single one. It would take forever because Bradbury was a very literary writer. So let's just kind of look at the way he describes things. The books leapt and danced like roasted birds, their wings ablaze with red and yellow feathers. You have personification here, turning something that is inanimate or like an object into something that has like living characteristics. So leaping and dancing, that's one element of personification. And then you have the simile here, like roasted birds with their wings ablaze. And then kind of the description of the fire, it's red and it's yellow and the pages look like feathers. There's more here, but I just scooted. So the house fell in red coals and black ash. It bedded itself down. So there's a bit of personification where it's as if it's going to bed, and a sleepy pink gray cinder and a smoke plume as it blew over it, rising and waving slowly back and forth in the sky. And he continues over, and it said there was a hiss like a great mouthful of spittle banging a red hot stove, a bubbling and frothing as if salt had been poured over a monstrous black snake to cause a terrible liquefaction and a boiling over of yellow foam. So we have the simile like, and then you have the as if. So there's two similes together. This is describing a person being like, when you take a flamethrower to a person, this is what's being described. So as Montag was firing Beatty, who he later says was his friend, and he's throwing flames at him, and his whole body is sizzling like a mouthful of spittle over a red hot stove and a black snake. It also says that he flopped over and over and at last twisted in on himself like a charred wax doll and lay silent. The other two firemen didn't move. They turned their faces like blanched meat. So it gives us a vivid image, like description of the imagery that we're seeing here. Again, he's talking about how he burns the dog, and as the dog comes, he caught it with a bloom of fire, a single wondrous blossom. So this is a metaphor. He's comparing it to a blossom that curls in petals of yellow and blue and orange about the metal dog. The color is important because when you burn metal, it changes a different color than when you burn paper. And so it does burn more blue. Again, the dog burst its metal bones at the joints. That's personification. It doesn't have bones. It's just an object. It's metal. And he lay watching the dead, alive thing fiddle the air and die. It was never alive, nor could it be dead, because again, it's just an object, but it's lifelike, and he's giving it those characteristics. Okay, so just highlighting more and more. You could go over those and find them for yourselves. But we get to another significant point when he has this realization that Beatty had wanted to die. How strange to want to die so much that you let a man walk around armed, and then you, instead of shutting up and staying alive, you go on yelling at people and making fun of them until you get them mad, and then, but he breaks off. He doesn't have a chance to finish it. He realizes he had just killed a person, and then he thinks about, like, wait, if he really valued his life, he would have been like, oh my goodness, he has a flamethrower pointed at me and I'm continuing to antagonize him. That'd be like if someone had a gun to your head and you're like making fun of them and taunting them and saying, oh yeah, are you going to kill me? Are you going to kill me? You do these things to make them angry. If you cared about your life, you'd shut up and you would stay still and silent. And he realizes that even Beatty didn't value life. There's such a flippancy to existence that he didn't even care about preservation. Okay, we get a similar kind of theme later on. He thinks he's running from the police because there's a car, it's during the chase, that's speeding up and it's roaring, and it goes like 100 miles an hour, 120, 130, and it comes so near to him. He falls over down on the ground, and then it was gone. It swerved, and then it left. And for a suddenly he realized that wasn't the police. He looked down the boulevard. It was clear now. A car full of children, all ages, from 12 to 16, were whistling, yelling, hurrahing. They had seen a man, a very extraordinary sight, a man who was strolling, a rarity. And they simply said, let's get him. Not knowing who he was, simply a number of children out for a long night of roaring 500 or 600 miles in a few hours. Their faces were icy with wind, and coming home or not coming at dawn, alive or not alive, that made the adventure. They would have killed me, thought Montag, swaying, the air still torn and stirring about him and dust touching his bruised cheek, for no reason at all in the world. They would have killed me. The thing that saved him was falling flat. The driver of the car, seeing him down, instinctively considered the probability that running over a body at that speed might turn the car upside down and spill them out. And if he had remained an upright target, he gasped. Again, life, no value, no meaning whatsoever in this culture. Why? Why doesn't life have value or meaning in this culture? Because you have to consider what does. Everything has its foil, and there's a term in literature called différance, not difference, but différance because it's a French term. And what it basically means is what is being said by what is left silent. So in other words, the author's not going to comment here on what they do value, but he's going to comment with extreme exaggeration about the death and the brokenness of the society. So what are we as the readers left to do is wonder, what do they value? Where has their humanity gone? And that's something I want you to think about, and we'll be answering that in the next segment.